I've been in finance, invested in tech, but never really got my head around Web3. It's a controversial industry filled with scandals, where everyone seems to have a different opinion. I've always wondered, is there something more behind the headlines? Web 1 and 2 have already changed how we live, work, and play. What happens when the next evolution is powered by a host of new values and technologies? I've discovered that countries in Asia are building for a Web3 future, each in their unique way. So, I'm on a journey to learn from the builders in real life. Singapore is known for being a financial and trade hub. In the past 7 years, I have seen how the fintech and blockchain scene grew in Singapore. First, there was payments company, consumer finance, and then more and more crypto companies set up their base here. But I feel that even now, when you talk about crypto, there are two camps of people. People who love it and think that it's world-changing, it is the next form of currency. And then there are those who are still very skeptical because they think that the currencies have no value. Personally, I think it's important to learn about crypto because it is one of the building blocks of Web3. It will be very interesting to meet Zen, who is dubbed as the crypto queen. You were in real estate before, right?
Yes.
How did you enter the crypto industry?
I was doing real estate investment for institutions. As an institutional landlord, you had to read up about all the upcoming technology, knowing where the demand would be. So I read up about Bitcoin in 2010 when it first started. What really struck me is really about a P2P system. So what does it mean when you have a peer-to-peer system, right? It's really removing a centralized entity in between the two peers. When you remove the centralized entity, what you're actually removing is a risk of failure, it's a risk of bad players or inadequate risk management, for example. From this, it brings about a decentralized ecosystem that could be built to replace or enhance the many centralized systems that we have.
And in your time in the crypto industry, how have you seen the technology evolve?
The first part, the focus was really a lot on Bitcoin, Ethereum, how you use it as a payment token. There are people who are aware of the potential of blockchain, but the application of it wasn't that much in the first few years until in the 2017-18, where you have the ICO boom, where the technology is used to create tokens and a decentralized business model. It's what we call at that time like crowdfunding on steroids. In a way, they are making fundraising more efficient and more democratic. You are letting the consumer own a piece of it, and whoever who are contributing to the ecosystem to own a piece of it. Of course, with that, you have the other side where you have scams and you have people just fundraising for the sake of fundraising and not really to innovate. Luckily, there was some innovation that continues till now. Bulk of the 9,000 cryptocurrency that exists in the crypto universe was birthed during the ICO days, where you have different kind of tokens representing different things. Financial assets, they are represented by certain tokens, platform tokens, some are governance tokens, some are membership tokens, utility tokens. I think this is the wide array of digital assets that form what I call like the software for the further development of Web3. Because Web3, fundamentally, what is really holding it up, right, is blockchain technology, the decentralized business model. So, some people think that Web3 is formerly known as cryptocurrency, just because cryptocurrency and tokens play such an important role in the Web3 business model and infrastructure.
Is it necessary for Singapore to embrace Web3 technologies?
Before we talk about the necessity of embracing, let's talk about the development. The whole speed of adoption of digital assets or cryptocurrency is fast moving right now. And the question is, if we don't adopt that, if we don't embrace that, what will happen to us? What will happen to Singapore? Without even thinking too much about it, you will know that you will be falling behind. The cost is huge. So I think there's only one way, is to really adopt it and embrace it in a lightning speed.
Going to Singapore FinTech Festival is an eye-opener. You understand the kind of conversations that are important. This year, I noticed that there were a lot of Web3 companies, ranging from crypto companies, DeFi, Metaverse. Even for the program, you can see there are a lot of Web3 content. I think that to me signifies that the traditional financial institutions are slowly embracing Web3, blockchain, and even crypto.
Project Orchid is really intended to be a multi-year, multi-phase initiative, and the intention is to develop the technology infrastructure and capabilities if and when we decide to issue central bank digital currency.
And for normal consumers, what are the use cases?
We are piloting a few different use cases. One here on the commercial side with Fast, Temasek, and Grab. They're trying this out on a commercial voucher basis, and they are looking at how different Web3 type of interfaces could be utilized. Then there's the other trial involving government vouchers, mainly working with DBS as well as open government products.
For Project Orchid, we are working with MEF as a development team.
And how does programmable money work?
Programmable money, right, is almost like a present. So it can actually tie currency to specific purposes. So for example, for it to be used at only certain shops or expire on a certain date.
These are the menu items.
Okay.
Just select one.
I'll take a potato salad, please.
How this works is through the use of a smart contract. Campaign organizers can specify where or when or how money is used. And the beauty of it is merchants get digital Singapore dollar directly in their wallet, so they get paid faster.
And then select the merchant to pay.
Okay.
This $5 is being paid to them in real time.
Thank you. Wow, that's really quick. Thank you.
So we started this project about 6 months ago through a coffee session at Zurich. Now you're seeing a live demo that participates with like at least 5,000 participants will be able to try this out real time. The speed to market is just unseen now.
Project Orchid is one of the many initiatives that MAS have spearheaded. Over the past few years, they tried to create a conducive environment through regulation, promote innovation through partnership in the industry, while trying to protect the retail investors. Everyone can see what they are doing, but what I'm really interested to know is why. What is the thinking behind it, and what is the larger strategy moving forward?
We believe Singapore should be playing a role of a leading thought leader in the space of technology application in financial services.
At the recent Singapore FinTech Festival, I noticed that there were a number of Web3 companies that are exhibiting alongside the traditional finance and FinTech companies. Which aspects of Web3 interest you?
Well, the foundational philosophy of Web3 is read, write, and ownership of the information. All of us who are the market participant in a digital economy can control and manage our value as we interact in this economy. But that's quite a distance, 10, 20 years future. But as we approach to that future, there are interesting technology which will come out of this Web 3.0. Things like distributed ledger, the principles behind crypto, decentralization, tokenization, atomic settlement, all these key features of a crypto asset, we are taking those concepts and applying to traditional finance.
So you're saying that the value of crypto is how it's actually benefiting traditional finance?
Yes, you are taking some of the useful technology out of crypto industry to improve the existing infrastructure inefficiencies within the traditional finance.
Web3 is really pushed forward by libertarians who aspires to decentralized power. I believe as a government, that's not what you want. How do you reconcile the ideological difference?
It's a fair statement. Innovation comes from this set of people who have a very different mindset. But that's have been the history of innovation always. I'm reading a book recently which talks about how alchemists facilitated the discovery of chemistry and medicine. I think there are these people who have these ideas which we can reconcile with, but they allow us to think differently. And I think that's the healthy part of an ecosystem which is pushing through innovation. There is genuine demand for innovative solution because there's a real problem to be solved. Things like cross-border transfer, settling payments with securities instantly. There is market infrastructure which is extremely inefficient, especially FX market. Is there any value in the underlying tech stack which powers this Web 3.0?
That's the problem
Our solution is embedded in the real card in Korea. We use the blockchain to solve the insecure authentication process in both centralized finance and decentralized finance.
We tackle the burden of compliance and KYC. That's actually a very fragmented process for most regulated entities.
In the true Web3 spirit, our product is fully decentralized. That means no centralization of cost, no centralization of trust, no central point of control.
Currently, we are the only company globally to have a live distributed KYC utility.
Taurus provides one platform to manage any digital asset. Cryptocurrencies, so think Bitcoin, Ethereum, tokenized assets, equity, debt, real estate. Digital currencies, think central bank digital currencies and stablecoin.
I've read in some articles that mention Singapore wants to be a crypto hub, and some actually mention that we want to be a digital asset hub. Which one is it?
Singapore as a crypto hub was a media narrative.
Is this?
We never said that Singapore wants to be a crypto hub. If there's a real demand in the future of finance for digital asset, Singapore wants to be a leader in the digital asset space because there is a real economic value behind this. We are shifting to a massive digital economy. And in digital economy, on the smart contracts, tokenizing asset, they're perhaps more efficient way to represent assets.
And what will Singapore's role be in the digital economy of the future?
Digital economy, interestingly, is dependent on two things, data and the infrastructure together. If you don't have these two components, there's no digital economy. So we are putting infrastructure ahead of many centers when it comes to payment services, when it comes to tokenized assets, when you talk about the green side. There are this future demand which we are trying to architect to. They may not be visible now, they may not be at a scale now, but you can't wait for that because technology runs like a hockey stick. There's a slow simmering demand and suddenly one fine day it moves like a hockey stick. So we are building this future infrastructure, hoping that when the shift happens, Singapore is ready.
Is this actually Singapore's opportunity? Do you think we can move from a regional to a global leader here?
Singapore can leapfrog using technology as a platform to play a very dominant role in the future of digital economy. There's no doubt in my mind. We have that global trust, we have the right talent set, and we have the right policymakers who can help us to go there.
Web 2, it was always very driven by people who were of that generation. So for example, Facebook was started by Mark Zuckerberg. But I realized that in Web 3, there are a lot of big boys, a lot of corporate. 2022 was a very significant year for institutional adoption globally. Tencent filed for patent for metaverse concerts. American Express launched product allowing users to earn crypto rewards. Nasdaq announced crypto custody service. The People's Bank of China extended the trial of eCNY CBDC. As the big boys embrace this frontier technology, I believe that Web3 is slowly becoming more and more mainstream.
Wampo Group is an investment company that looks across all industries, whether it's traditional industries, tech, infra. More recently, we've put more resources and effort into the digital asset space because we think there's a tremendous potential with Web3 and how it could disrupt traditional industries. And that's how Wampo Digital came about.
You are focused solely on Web3 and cryptocurrencies, is that right?
That's correct.
The founders of your fund come from very prominent families. Are they not worried about being associated with an industry that is plagued with scams, hacks, and frauds?
We need to take a step back first to think about technology industry in general. Scams, hack, failures, and all that. You know, it's more commonly we can just call it bubble. And bubble is something that has been pretty commonly seen in previous cycles where there is significant innovation. For example, the dot-com bubble during the late 90s. A lot of companies fail in the process, but a lot of the strong technology companies that we see nowadays, including Amazon and eBay, also came from the same period. So we believe it's the same for Web3.
Family offices tend to invest long-term and invest for generations. For Web3, is that something that you're looking at?
Yes, absolutely. I think our ethos of long-term investment and fundamental value definitely applies to Web3. In fact, I would say we put more emphasis there given the nascency of the industry and how innovation happens every day. What our fund focuses on is on the mass adoption angle because we believe that is the pain point of the industry at the moment, and also the biggest factor that would drive this industry going forward.
What do you think will drive mass adoption?
It comes down to two basic things: users and use case. What we see in Asia is actually very, very unique. For Southeast Asia, the blockchain adoption is probably faster than US, Europe, or even China, just in the amount of sheer users. Markets like Indonesia, Vietnam shares a very similar characteristic. There's still a very high mobile penetration and internet penetration. The demographics, it's still growing by a much higher number than the developed markets such as Japan and Korea. And so it's actually a perfect ground for blockchain adoption. But Japan has a very strong IP resource with manga, with anime. Korea also has a very strong IP resource with K-pop, drama, and all that. And those are things that actually Southeast Asia don't offer. But those are things that could be offered to Southeast Asia through blockchain. And that's what we're seeing a lot of the companies do. These are things that most of us are very familiar with and would motivate daily users to actually participate in the blockchain. Where we see Singapore really thrive is definitely the more centralized finance related. A lot of people have the misconception that for blockchain, finance equals decentralized finance and nobody can track your transactions. But there's also the centralized part, which enables users to come into the Web3 world with a regulated entry. So for example, regulated KYC, regulated products, regulated activities that you can do as an investor.
In Asia, we are constantly talking about the growth of the mass affluent, but we think that this space is not well served. Singapore itself, as a very established wealth hub, we see an opportunity to help bring a new set of investor base into the private markets.
Why do you use the blockchain? Isn't the current solution good enough?
There is no really current solution. Part of that was nobody thought that private markets should be invested by mass affluent because the design is very different. Private equity funds are, for example, 10 years long. Venture capital as well. Hedge funds have a different risk profile. Over time, investors are starting to see that they do need alternatives to add into their portfolio. And the infrastructure now exists to tap that very, very large mass affluent base. I'm not wealthy enough to have $1 million hedge fund in my portfolio, right? But I would certainly want some 20,000 or 50,000 exposure. So what we do is we take these products, for example, private equity, venture capital, hedge funds, credit. We put a securities wrap around investable items. We tokenize that and then it trades on our platform.
Just for my understanding, how are different assets tokenized?
It doesn't matter what kind of asset class it is, if it's private equity or hedge fund or real estate fund, the tokenization part is always the same. So what you're seeing here on the screen, it's how it looks like from an investor perspective when they want to invest into an offering on our platform. For example, you can see this company wants to raise $1 million. We can see that the price per token is $100. There are 50,000 tokens available. Once this offering closes, we start with the tokenization, and that is where the minting or the creation of the digital securities happens. On the screen, we can see our blockchain explorer, which records all the actions that are happening on our private Ethereum chain. You can see here how 50,000 new blocks are created and distributed to the investor wallets. If there's any transactions, for example, if an investor buys or sells, then we could see that this block has recorded these transactions.
You published a report with Boston Consulting Group. You mentioned that tokenized assets will grow 50-fold, right? Can you tell me more about your predictions?
We basically predict everything will be tokenized. I think tokenization will slowly take over current world databases and current world processes. It's not just financial markets, it's real assets that will be on blockchain. Real estate, your piece of art. Already supply chain is looking at how do you tokenize information across that. Blockchain is such an interesting technology that it opens the space to everything.
We hear problems in agriculture like food waste, food safety, sustainability. So Dimuto was started to solve the problem at the root. Take something that was analog for 5,000 years and turn it into something that is digital in the modern world. This is DACI. It means digital asset creation. DACI is an IoT device that captures the image and send it to the cloud and then link to the blockchain. This is the key process for us to turn the physical assets into what we call the digital asset, the digital twin. Imagine we're now in China packing apples and we need to digitize this physical apples. And what we do, we will start a session. And as it goes through the packing lines, each of the carton is now captured. This is where the digital twin appears, from the physical world to the digital world.
Why is it so important for us to digitize all this?
Because currently, this journey of this asset in the physical world is not seen by anyone else except the people handling it. This is where fraud happens. Many a times we can have fruits that claims that this is from one country, but they actually put stickers or change the box. Then in terms of things like food safety, you need to know that the necessary documents and checks has actually been done. So with the digital twin on the platform, we're now able to have an identity of each carton box. And with this identity, you are able to see who packed it, what was unpacked, when was it received, every inspection that was done. All that details are now captured and put into the blockchain.
How does your solution actually solve fraud?
When you use the blockchain, a lot of this information becomes only one truth, and you can't change that transaction anymore. You can't say, oh, sorry, I made a mistake, and then that line just gets deleted. And that data, it's actually timestamped. So it may not prevent fraud, but it definitely can capture the fraud happening because you know who did what, when.
You use a lot of technology here to disrupt an industry that has been around for many years. But what is actually your business model and how is it sustainable?
From the trade data and the digital assets, we're able to provide a lot of insights on our trade management platform. Do financial services in terms of lending and create our marketplace where you actually know who your buyers are and your suppliers are, and they're all fully transparent. This ecosystem idea is really how our sustainable business model is all about.
Singapore has ambitions to be a digital asset hub. What do you think are the roles of companies like Dimutu?
Singapore physically has always been geographically located for trade, but it's been focused in non-perishable trade. A lot of the perishable trade are actually drop shipped directly from one location to the others. Making it digital, it doesn't matter if the trade is moving from Mexico all the way to China. We are now able to capture the trade.
You know, when you explain to me, it sounds quite commonsensical, but why has that not been done before? Do you think it's because blockchain is the technology that powers cryptocurrencies?
I think a lot of times people who are in the agri-trade do not look at technology that far out. Really, the problem in our industry is weather. You know, the monsoon lately, too much rain or not enough rain in drought situation. This extremes that we're actually managing in the real physical world is causing us not to actually spend time looking at anything else because it just doesn't seem relevant. But we think that Web 3.0 and AI, it's really going to change the way trade is done because in the past, people are actually doing the right thing because they are told to do the right things. Web 3.0 is really allowing us to use technology that makes the trade transparent. And when data is more transparent, consumers can now see what kind of harm or what kind of impact it has on the environment that they are living in. So this is really going to change the world. We now need to act for the good of the environment, the society that we live in, and also the people we work with.
In my Singapore journey so far, we have seen how Web3 technologies like blockchain is used to enhance business processes in finance and trade and make them more efficient. But what Gary said struck me. He said that because in the Web3 world, information are readily available and it's open, all of us have to be more accountable to the environment and society. I want to explore how the use of blockchain technology can enhance trust. So I'm on my way to Bintan to meet a Singaporean company that uses blockchain for social impact.
Hello. Hi, Anna.
Hi.
Thanks for coming. A lot of people misunderstand anything that's Web3 related as a cryptocurrency project. So we want to go back to the basics about using blockchain and how we can apply this technology for good. We are going to see a water and sanitation project. It's called Safe Water Gardens. Open defecation actually causes a lot of deaths in Indonesia, and they try and improve their living standards by giving them proper sanitation. And we're going to view it in person, physically, and do due diligence. A lot of the projects claim to be transparent and they want to raise funds and do good. But if we cannot have data to verify how the funds are used, what's the social impact, then we won't onboard them for fundraising. Hi, good morning, Dr. Mark. How are you? Hi. This is Anna. Hello, Anna.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. It's very important for us when we bring on a project that they are really serious about that transparency element. We are very conscious of the fact that when we raise funds, we need to be accountable, not just as a platform, but for the projects that we onboard.
So before I show you the safe water garden, I first show you the toilet. This family didn't have a toilet before, open defecation. That's about 5% of the Indonesian households still suffers from that. The toilets are next to the safe water garden. Then these two bits of wastewater go into this tank. This tank liquefies the wastewater and is safely released into the garden.
So they're planting chili and papaya here.
In Indonesia, you need rice and you need chili, no matter how poor you are. If you can grow your own chili, you save 10-15% of the household income.
So how much does this whole system cost and how many have you installed so far?
In Bintan should be around 600 plus now, and in all of Indonesia about 700. We want people to build it themselves. So taking those costs, that toilet is less than 200 Singapore dollar on average. The safe water garden is somewhere between 500 to 600 dollars. But we try to encourage people to share, because then the cost goes down to less than $300 per family. And that one the Indonesians can afford.
Ibu bakal rekomendasi WC-nya enggak?
Senang. Tapi biasanya kami di hutan-hutan WC-nya. Jadi ini alhamdulillah ada dikasih kan.
Iya.
Terus aku bisa dapat ininya, bisa pakai, bisa mandi, nggak kena hujan.
Iya.
Bahagia aku.
Why is transparency and accountability so important for social enterprises? Do you think that due diligence has been lacking?
I think due diligence is a huge problem, right? People pledge a certain amount to charity, but when funds are raised, you don't actually have that transparency. Sometimes they don't reach the beneficiary as promptly as we would like to, or there's a lot of intermediary expenses that are incurred along the way, and then your $10 doesn't actually reach the beneficiary, maybe only $5 or $6. That's why we embrace blockchain technology to show and demonstrate how funds are really used, how much actually it reaches the beneficiaries, and how this social impact is measured. We automate how funds are administered. Whatever pledge to beneficiaries on our platform get automatically transmitted to them by smart contract. I think that should be the new standard in accountability to your donor. Can you tell me a little bit about data that you collect?
In the past, what we did is we talk always with the village chief. So like, who are the poorest people? Who do you think needs the system most? We would rely on them to make the right choice. Then I started to talk with the village people about data. To my surprise, they also want data, because the Jokowi government has said we want to do good things for the people, but we need to measure it. The village chief actually want data also.
Terus untuk kepemilikan jamban
Tuh saya bikin sendiri pribadi.
sendiri ya,
Iya.
pribadi.
So we do the whole village now, measure what the situation is before we intervene. That gives us our baseline. Then we'll go back after 3 months, 6 months later, and 9 months later to see how is it going with the micro farming. We check if they have started a micro business, which is something that the government really hopes they do, because they want villages to have an economic future. And they can, because once they have water and sanitation, they could start a small restaurant, maybe sell some lemonade, maybe do even a homestay. And so we measure that too.
What he's saying is very true. They're very big on data now, and blockchain is used across all sectors in Indonesia, inclusive of how they monitor agriculture projects, water projects.
What do you think of the use of blockchain for the region?
I think anything that improves transparency should be considered because it improves the business process, improves accountability, not just to your organization, but to your stakeholders, to the public. Singapore has a great reputation for being a people that are trustworthy. We should embrace that role as service providers to enhance the transparency and accountability for the region.
Web3 certainly promises many new approaches that can complement and build up digital trust, particularly the use of blockchain and smart contracts, but it's not perfect. Web3 itself, particularly the metaverse, also need to be augmented with some of the existing trust technologies.
Web3 is supposed to actually resolve issues of trust because of its governance, because of its protocols. Why are we still talking about trust in Web3?
Web3 merely allows us different ways to not rely on centralized parties like banks or big tech companies, but fundamentally in a Web3 setting where we are dealing with each other on the internet. None of us on Web3 know who each other are. We only see our wallets. In that sense, it is good. Privacy is being preserved, but at the same time, there are many approaches that bad actors can take to be able to game that system as well. Smart contracts that may not be well written can be hacked. Digital wallet can also be phished. In all online transactions, there's an increasing risk of harmful influences, deepfakes, disinformation, and so on. Singapore, unfortunately, is one of our big targets for hacking. There is a lot of online trade that's being affected. But opportunities also lie in these vulnerabilities.
What kind of solutions do you foresee that we might need?
Cybersecurity is a big space. In a Web3 environment where it's open, it's decentralized, it's not reliant on a big tech company to protect my firewall, cybersecurity itself has to also catch up. Digital identity is another big space. Today, a lot of the work in digital identities remains in the space of payments and verifying certain maybe key documents. For example, maybe did I really graduate from this school? Or do I really own this house, for example? There's an increasing need to be able to interoperate across multiple digital identities to be able to validate for your consumers that they have a trusted standing. Asia is the largest and fastest growing region in the world when it comes to digital trade. But the level of digital readiness is very different. The legal frameworks are also still inconsistent. So certainly B2B digital identities is also something important to think about.
If you look at big disruptive innovation, it's often driven by a very strong belief that there is a better way of doing things. That's really the genesis of Affinity. We want to be on the right side of history.
We both grew up in the Web2 world. So maybe if we can take a step back, I would like to understand, how does identity fit into a Web3 world?
I believe it's right at the very heart of Web3, because if we're saying that Web3 is about shifting ownership to the individual, then the starting point of that has to be the recognition of what is that identity. Today, if you think about when you log into a website, it's so convenient when you see log in with your Facebook ID, log in with your Apple account, Google. While it's convenient, it's not your identity. And what it's doing is it's extending the surveillance of those identity platforms into all of these other third-party sites. So in the Web3 world, it's about reversing it, where your identity, it's yours, Anna. It's in your wallet. It's on your device. Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, TikTok, they have to log into Anna.
Okay.
And you're giving permission about what about your identity, your data, your choosing to elevate to them. That's the big change that's coming.
And that is what we term as decentralized identity.
The interesting about decentralized identity is, depends what perspective you look at it. You think about organizations that want to interact with my identity. It's very decentralized. From an individual's perspective, actually I'm centralizing my identity. If I think about your identity, that is fragmented across hundreds and thousands of platforms. The shopping sites have a slice about what you might want to buy. Sites that you might watch content on, know what viewing habits you have. With the Web3 identity model, we can bring that all into a singular holistic view. So individuals can have complete control of our own identity and information. And this gets really exciting for a few reasons. One, we know that every single time we've been able to create new digital information, and not only create new digital information, but share it. It has driven waves of innovation that have created the next $1 trillion businesses. We saw that in Web 1, Wikipedia, and how it transformed education. We've seen that in Web 2, Facebook, YouTube, that completely changed how we think about our entertainment, our social connectivity, for example. I don't think we know what the next $1 trillion businesses will be in the Web3 world, but they are absolutely coming. They're going to come built on the back of this new form of identity and this holistic view of oneself.
I understand the problem, and I also understand what you're trying to achieve. How are you achieving this?
By building some cutting-edge technology under the scenes. We are creating the tools and services that allows us to create holistic identities for ourselves. And we believe that's about creating an identity vault, which is a safe and secure way to store all of this information that's aggregated across all of these sites. As we build these kind of underlying technologies behind identity, we then look to apply them to some real-world use cases. For example, one of our partner organizations, Trustana, they're doing this around complex cross-border trade, for example, about how do SMEs across countries build trust with each other quickly. Financial services around authentication and customer or KYC. In the health system, having portability of your health records, simplifying travel. If any of the viewers, for example, came in and out of Singapore recently and used their vaccination certificates, did you know that there's a bit of blockchain technology behind that? Did you know you're using a decentralized identifier as part of that capability? Wherever you see these kind of complex flows of information, there are new techniques we can use with these technologies that simplify the exchange of information.
Out of curiosity, do you consider yourself as a Web3 company?
I love this question. No, the simple answer is no. And the reason for that is, I think it's a really bad label. I think Web3 is an overladen term. I think it means vastly different things to different people. We are an identity company. And while we utilize technologies from the Web3 world, I don't think we can ignore rapid increase in artificial intelligence, quantum computing becoming more mainstream. We're seeing robotics and automation. It's the convergence of all of these technologies at the moment and over the next 5 to 10 years that is going to drive a wave of innovation that will be incredibly disruptive.
I've seen how Singapore is laying down the foundations for a future digital economy. By building the financial infrastructure to power future finance, platforms that facilitate the flow of digital assets, and even build solutions in identity to tackle issues at the heart of our online interactions. But there's another important piece to the puzzle.
We use metaverse and artificial intelligence technology to build a platform for us to optimize data center operations.
How does your technology solve the problems of the data centers?
Data center is the enabler for our digital economy, but unfortunately, data center consumes huge amount of electricity and also a major carbon emitter. That's why we develop new solutions which help the industry to achieve carbon neutral data center in the future. This digital twin model actually was inspired when I noticed my kid can play Minecraft. It's a new way to look at how we can operate mission-critical infrastructure based on the computer games.
We can connect to the data center management systems and find out all the hotspots currently existing in their data center rooms and recommend actions generated by our AI engines to help them to further reduce energy consumptions.
Your technology is also being used to develop tropical data centers. Can you tell me more about the project?
The tropical environment facing the challenge of high temperature and then high humidity. So this project is a platform which open to all the researchers to test out new advanced cooling technology. ASEAN has become one of the highly dense data center region. So we aim to develop this technology for our tropical environment and export this capability to the adjacent countries in the ASEAN area.
Aside from environmental benefits, an interesting fact of the work done by the Sustainable Tropical Data Centers is that it's funded by National Research Foundation. This is an agency that reports directly to the Prime Minister's office. Actually, this is what I find most interesting in my Singapore journey. Most of the companies that we have met are building the future with significant backing from Singapore's most prominent institutions. Affinity is 100% owned by sovereign wealth fund Temasek. Dimuto counts SG Innovate as one of its investors. SG Innovate is a government-owned innovation platform focused on deep tech. ADEX is a startup backed by the Singapore Exchange, and Whampoa Group is a multi-family office anchored by principals from the Lee clans. On one hand, it's ironic to see these startups building for a Web3 future with funding from centralized institutions. On the other hand, this shows Singapore's ambition to be a major player in the Web3 space. Singapore has continuously evolved from a fishing village to a trade hub and to a financial powerhouse. Perhaps this is the next evolution for Singapore as it repositions itself to be a global leader in the digital economy.